This is like a script. It's not a game script.
Right.
It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
Welcome to the Citizen Kane podcast, a podcast where we revive Roger Ebert's bloated corpse and force him to admit that Randy Pitchford is a more important artist than every member of the French New Wave.
Well said.
Okay.
And this is this This is the Citizen Kane podcast with Ryan and George. That is our names / aliases, which we didn't say last time. So there you go.
Okay.
So last episode, you said The Last of Us is the peak of prestige games. And what did you mean by that?
Peak may be the wrong... It's the epitome, I think, because I think around the release of The Last of Us and the discourse around it is when the concept of the prestige game, solidified in the discourse. Literally our podcast is named after it indirectly as the Citizen Kane of gaming, which is what a reviewer called it. It gave us this name. And it is really where the idea of the prestige game solidified. Retroactively, you can look back and see stuff that we would call prestige games or whatever. Like the proto stuff that we identified in the third Uncharted game. Proto prestige stuff in the third Uncharted game.
Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid, yeah. The entire Metal Gear series, especially 2 and probably 2 especially.
Even the first one,
the first
hopefully
Metal Gear Solid,
we'll talk. Hopefully,
that's a different episode.
If we can get to, I'm just saying, if we can muster up the time to play it. I know at one point a bad guy says, "Hey, buddy, have you thought about all the people you've killed playing this game?"
Yes.
And that's prestige right there.
Right. And then, of course, on that subject, stuff like Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, that too.
Which also does that. And things like that. But where the idea of the prestige game solidifies it is Last of Us. And maybe also BioShock Infinite, which came out the same year, right?
I almost would like to say that it's almost like you have those two games, and I don't want to say you have two separate visions. Of course you have two separate visions because it's two different games. But I feel like there was a winner and a loser of how you're going.
And
to
the winner
these.
was The Last of Us, unquestionably. Yeah. In terms of how sort of narrative-driven AAA games, narrative-focused, whatever, AAA games will be constructed. They are all constructed on the Last of Us model and not the BioShock Infinite model.
Which, that model... And also,
so let's identify the model. Let's say what it is.
It is you are going to have a third-person action stealth game, but you're going to have some really good-ass cutscenes in between those beats.
Yes.
I think you can rope David Cage. He's in our intro. David Cage is prestige gaming, and he's his own brand. And so if you want to make it even more broad, I would definitely say it's like...
Heavy Rain?
Yeah, there's Heavy Rain, but I here's what I'm trying to say. Prestige games it's answering the question of how do we make our game artistic? And the answer that these certain creators have come up with is by putting good movies in them, like HBO quality movies in your games, or Oscar quality, whatever you want to do. And the answer that other people found, indies can't do that, so obviously the answer has to be something else. And that's how I would define it.
Yeah. Well, you're right because Prestige Games, of course, comes out of Prestige TV. And if we want to look at the cultural context The Last of Us gets released in, the biggest thing in television that everyone's talking about is Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead, yeah. Which I think the game version of that came out around this time.
Yes,
it
but
was
that's a very different
zombie
game than this.
fever. Like it was.
Yeah, well, yeah. This was during the era of like the zombie movie, right? This zombie revival of the early 2010s that I think is fully dead at this point.
Fully undead, or it'll be fully
We're
undead when
waiting
it
to
comes
be
back.
raised.
Yeah.
Well, it's already a revival of the like zombie shit in the 80s.
Yeah,
and
it's just,
70s.
I
With
mean,
Romero.
nothing ever dies anymore.
Yeah,
Our
that's
culture is a zombie, you might say.
Yeah, way to make the same point as Day of the Dead.
I really gotta watch that movie.
So you have a third-person stealth action game, action stealth, whatever. Like Uncharted, the studio's previous series. And then in between you have these cutscenes that try, arguably more than any other generation of cutscenes, to be movies.
It's like someone said, because lots of games have had movies in between their gameplay bits, like, no shit. It's like someone said, like, well, damn, what if we made it good, you know? And what do you know? That's definitely being uncharitable, because I think so. That's my next question. Do you like this game, and how much do you like it?
So just before recording this, obviously I was replaying it to a degree. I was not playing the whole thing. The core gameplay still works very well, I think. Like, the action stealth is done competently, where if you enjoy Uncharted and you enjoy those sorts of games, it is a slightly more tense and visceral version of that.
I would compliment it even more. Like, I like that it plays around with the really low ammo counts compared to
That's
the
what I mean
Uncharted.
by tense.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that ammo is always scarce, pretty much always, except for certain sections, adds a really good level of tension to the fights. And gives you a reason to stealth. Like, beyond just wanting to see if you can do it or whatever, there is a mechanical advantage to sneaking around and avoiding enemies or stealth killing enemies. Because it lets you save ammo for the sections where you have to have a gunfight.
Yeah, and going to some of well, I guess I'm not going to the reviews, but that's also where the game gets flack, because people say, isn't this just Resident Evil 4? Which, I mean, not just that, but also, I guess, like, isn't this just every other game? Because I'm trying to think, like, after this game, you definitely have more of the stealth action, where you have both. I mean, we'll talk about Tomb Raider.
Uncharted 4 does it.
Uncharted 4 does it, for fuck's sake. Every Assassin's Creed game is kind of like that, but I suppose that owes a lot to Arkham Asylum. Every game owes so much to Arkham Asylum, which is crazy to think about. I try not to open that can of worms. All that to just say is, I like it a lot too, and I think it's underselling it a bit to call it generic, because I don't think other games that do this shit, like Far Cry, quite nail the desperate guerrilla combat. You've played, like, the Metro games, right?
Yes.
I love those games. Huge fanboy of them. They don't quite have the polished mix of going in and out of stealth and ammo counts, as they just don't flow as well when they're kind of doing the same thing. And part of that is Naughty Dog they cheat a little bit with ammo pickups are more frequent when you're low on ammo, depending on difficulty. I'm just saying it's good shit. It's pretty good shit, and I'll generally fight someone if they say it's just generic third-person action combat.
Right. Because that is... I do agree that it does work, and it does serve to create a... Because the idea is that... So, this is just movies with gameplay in between. I sort of agree with that in the sense that there's a Red Letter Media video where they talk about games where the core idea did not start as games, like not literally.
Is
but...
this like their other channel with Rich Evans and Jack Picard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I remember I saw this video when it came out like 5 years ago, but they talked about how Last of Us, clearly the starting point is the narrative, the characters, the world, the story, etc. And then, okay, but what's the gameplay?
And he says, I don't know, it's a third-person shooter.
And then he says, a third-person shooter? And I feel like that's true to a degree in that they start with the third-person shooter template, and then they just sort of tweak things to create the right tone.
Yes.
Right? So Uncharted, which is an obvious point of comparison, because it's the same style of game and it's made by the same people, there's generally always enough ammo. Automatic weapons. Your characters move very fast. You're always changing guns, picking up new, cool types of gun.
I mean, you know, like, I think we get it. Like, in Uncharted, you're not throwing a brick at someone. That's all you need to say. You're not killing someone with a fucking brick.
Or beating someone to death with a baseball bat.
Yeah. I get exactly what you're saying. And you're right. And that's where it works. I think where you see the same, I guess you could say, problem as Uncharted is you want to make a game, and you want to make a popular game that is received as something more important. And the question is, you have to make a game about killing people, because that's how you make a mainstream
game that
video
makes money.
game. And of course there are exceptions, but generally speaking, games with a certain budget are about killing people. These types of games. Mm-hmm. And so how do you put that in? And you do that with third-person combat. And I've lost my train of thought.
Well, because in Uncharted, what you talked about a lot is like Nathan Drake is this fun-loving, charismatic, likable hero.
Right, that's what you got it. You just triggered what I was going to say,
yes.
Which is that's why this game feels the best and out of most of Naughty Dog stuff, because it's like, we're going to make a game about killing that includes fucking killing people, and it's like the book by Spec Ops: The Line writer Walt Williams said. It's like, we're making a game about shooting people in the face. And that limits a little bit what you can do. And that's why The Last of Us is probably the best of the bunch, because they wrote a story where it's about killing people. But this is where I have to bring up The Last of Us 2 a little bit. Mm-hmm. Which is, The Last of Us 2 is really about killing people. It's about revenge. It's about all that shit. This game strikes a balance where the story is these vignettes, and it's about Joel and Ellie, and it's about their relationship, and the killing people fits the world, but still gets to be a little bit more ancillary. It's not like as much of a theme as it is in Last of Us 2. And because you're still, most of the time, you're fighting despicable people. They still get to be stormtroopers, even in this really more grounded world, because you're fighting bandits. You're fighting cannibals. And so it is the perfect story to have your cake and eat it.
Right, barring the ending, which we'll talk about.
Barring the ending. And yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Because So in my replay, I noticed how often Ellie, when you kill someone with a headshot or by beating them to death, will just say like Jesus.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, it happens like every time. Almost.
Every
It
time
feels
you like get a headshot, basically
a brutal kill. Yeah,
yeah, or you stomp on someone's head, or you hit someone with a baseball bat. She just comments, "Jesus, Joel," or something like that. So the game is constantly reminding you that you're doing some pretty psychotic stuff as far as killing just endless people. But you're right that it doesn't make that quite a central theme.
it recognizes the intensity and how fucked up it is, but it's also, it's not going to the point of you were doing something bad. It's
Right.
more the attitude of, yeah, it's pretty fucked up what you have to do to survive in this world.
Yeah.
So, I sent you that video from by Errant Signal,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially, to boil down his main point is the game treats its story and gameplay like oil and water. And I think that sums up a lot of what some of the more highbrow criticism that came later was. And I was wondering what you thought of that whole thing.
Well, I don't know how... So, like I've said, the story... And I mean, he says this in the video. The gameplay definitely carries the tone of the cutscenes. It's desperate, it's violent.
Scrappy.
It's ugly, it's scrappy, yeah, etc. So he's right to a degree there, but I don't think it's on the level... It's definitely much less than Uncharted, like we've said, because the violence is part of the character. And doing those things, like having Ellie just comment on little things during combat sequences even, I think that does a lot more to keep those feeling more integrated than I think he gives it credit for.
I agree with that. And also, just not to shit on him too bad, because I've followed his stuff forever, and he's one of the people that it's like in 2010, he was one of the first people I saw use the word ludonarrative dissonance, and then like 10 years later, he's like, that was extremely embarrassing, which is how I feel a lot of people felt at the time, including me, even though I was like 14 or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't... This game, I mean, like, if we want to take ludonarrative dissonance seriously as a theory, doesn't have very much.
No, it's a game about killing people,
It is a game
and that's
about
what you do.
going from point A to point B and killing everyone in your way, which is also what the gameplay is.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about his video is, at least at this point in time, it seems like he has an idea of what a game should be, or at least a game trying to say something. And it seems to be more along the line of, I don't know, take your pick. This War of Mine, Papers, Please. I mean, Undertale. I haven't played Disco Elysium, but games where the mechanics are saying something, and that's your prime, where it's, yeah, I mean, how else do you say it? It's not movies. The way you experience the themes of the game are through its mechanics.
Not through its narrative, explicit narrative.
Yeah, and I think people who don't like these games kind of have that view of it's a flawed format. And what do you think of that? Do you think this is a flawed design in itself, just fundamentally?
So, because I was thinking about this even before I saw that video, that this game does still have cutscenes that are distinct from gameplay. Like, it does just play movies for you. And so I think what we're really asking is that fundamentally broken? The idea of a cutscene.
Oh, really? I mean...
Kind of. Because, like...
Or at least inefficient. Just the wrong way of doing things.
The wrong way of telling stories in games.
Yeah, what is your personal
opinion
opinion on that?
Yeah. Title your think piece. Are cutscenes obsolete?
That has to exist.
That has to exist, but if not, I'm writing it.
It's 10 years old. It came out in
Oh my god.
2011.
Oh
I'm making shit up, but I'm just guessing.
Oh, I thought you Googled it.
No.
But basically that is the core question behind what you're asking. Is the
So give me an
gameplay
answer,
cutscene
coward.
divide. I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much. I think they're fine. Like, there's an obsession with analyzing media based on what only they can do. And you see this a lot in...
especially in games. Like,
I see it a lot in comics scholarship.
really, please.
Yes.
Since I know nothing about that, I would love you to take some time to talk about that.
So there's this big analysis of Watchmen by a comics writer named Kieran Gillen. That talks about how Watchmen, the whole thing of, you know how Dr. Manhattan sees past, present, and future all as all is constantly present, right? He experiences the universe as a constant present. Well, he was like, well, that's like, I'm not going to do his accent. Well, that's like how you read a comic, you see, because the past and the present and the future in the panels are all on the page together. And it's only your eye that is making one panel the present for you.
Damn. All right. You got me there.
So yeah, and that is a focus on what only comics can do. And the ways comics, Moore himself said comics can engage both sides of your brain, which is probably pseudoscience. But
yeah, I get what it means.
But yes, because you read and you look and you're still looking, whatever. I think the fact that this idea of like, we need to make art that does something that has to be a comic, and the idea that we need to make something that has to be a video game is a sign. It's because these are mediums that are seen as less legitimate.
Yeah, it's the small dick problem.
You have to prove that there is a unique purpose for the medium. A unique way it can tell stories.
Otherwise, you are wasting your goddamn time thinking about it, because if it's not doesn't have the cultural weight as something else, like, I don't know, fucking Mozart or whatever, then you're a fucking fool, and you're a man-child wasting your life talking and posting about these games. And so, or you're a fool for being a game journalist or a guy who makes YouTube videos. So you have to find something important.
I mean, it goes to the question, which is the one that posed in that Red Letter Media video. Why isn't this a movie?
It's not a movie because...
It's not a movie because they didn't want to make a movie.
Yeah.
They wanted to make a video game. Like, the idea that every game has to justify why is this story being told as a game implies that the obvious default is to not be a game.
All right, with you setting that up, I'm going to just full out come to bat for part of The Last of Us. At least if you come at it with... why isn't it a movie? I will 100% say, because there's something fundamentally interesting about moving around a character and controlling them, for one thing.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of good meat and potatoes environmental storytelling. It's just inherently interesting to move about a space and experience, because... you're not experiencing like plot beats, but you're experiencing narrative by just exploring the space that it's in a fundamentally different way. And that's why The Last of Us isn't a movie, because you don't get to wander through somebody's abandoned neighborhood at your own pace. So
yeah, I agree.
I think that part is definitely not worthy of thinking about. As far as my take on is it a fundamentally flawed way of doing things? I've got basically two different takes about this, and the first one is I generally try and just take things as they are. I try not, because I used to, because full disclosure, Errant Signal was my intro into like thinking about games on a deeper level, which is why I'm so cringy. And so I try to not do that and just take games as they are. And if I'm going to use a metaphor, I would use music, which is sometimes you've got, because he uses a music metaphor. He's like, are we supposed to compliment the music when it's just the most basic shit with good lyrics? And the answer is yes, because sometimes you do the basic ass 4 chords, and you wrap some really good lyrics around that, and that is enough sometimes. Not everything is Peter and the Wolf, where the flute represents a character and the oboe represents another character, and it's very highbrow and interesting.
I say the lyrics are part of the fucking song.
Yeah, that too.
Like,
and
pretending the lyrics don't exist is nonsense.
Yeah, and the second part to that, my second thought is, where I think it's valid, where he doesn't talk about, is it's about money. It's about the budget, which is only the best of the best and most expensive can do this sort of format for the most part. I mean, maybe you could do something. I've seen games where they do like a more comic booky cutscene, but you know what I'm talking about. Indie games can't do this because they can't do a whole fucking mocap studio. And so if you're upholding this as what, artistic games can be, that's really limiting. And that's like, 2 games a year, maybe,
Yeah. So I want to talk about the other aspect of the game. So some other aspects of the gameplay because I do want to move on to talk about the plot, because that is so important and core to the game. But so there are these sections of the game where that turns into like a puzzle game, kind of.
Yeah.
Where you're moving Ellie around on a pallet through water because she can't swim.
And most reviewers at the time
hated that shit.
They call it out as rightfully
as
the
a
weakest
weak part
of the game.
And they're absolutely correct. I don't know why that's there. Is it just a remnant from, because these are the people who did Uncharted, and Uncharted has puzzles that are way more central to the gameplay?
It's there to give quiet time, and it's just like a really shitty way of giving quiet time. It's like, and it's almost hilarious where it's like, so what we came up with, I mean, the quiet time is generally traversal, which is, exploring, gathering resources, and to add to that traversal, they thought of moving garbage dump, fucking, what? I'm having a goddamn stroke.
A pallet?
Yeah, moving pallets, moving ladders, and compared to the rest of the game, it just seems so quaint.
Yeah, no. Because, like I said, Last of Us created, in many ways, or at least solidified the current era of big-budget AAA games. And those elements feel like a remnant of a previous era.
They feel like, you know what they feel? They feel too video gamey. And that's what a lot of these games are trying not to be, is... do you understand what I mean by video gamey? They feel like fucking Zelda block puzzles.
Yes, they feel like because they feel like this is the one point where there's a bit of ludonarrative dissonance. And let me explain what I mean.
All right.
They feel like they don't belong to the genre that Last of Us is trying to be part of. Last of Us is going for The Road, or The Walking Dead, or one of those, a very serious, grounded, realistic narrative.
Yes.
And it mostly constructs very real feeling, lived in environments, right? But then having these obviously constructed parts of those environments.
It feels artificial.
Yes, that exist purely to have a puzzle. It's so transparent.
To kill time till the next beat. Yeah.
Yeah. The setup where it's like, oh, we've got to push this ladder over. Or we've got to move this plank of wood, or we've got to knock this thing over so you can step on it. That's so obviously constructed and unnatural. And that works in a game like Uncharted, because Uncharted is an action-adventure story.
You work it into the fun, old, impossible, ancient machines, too.
Yes. You are not... Uncharted does not act like it takes place in a real world. It takes place in the world that Indiana Jones takes place in. Not literally, but you
Not
know
the
what I mean.
1940s.
Not the 1940s, but the world of pulpy action adventure.
Yes.
Even when it wants to take itself seriously, it is still a serious story about a guy who shoots people and hunts treasure for a living.
Yeah, and that is where I do feel maybe there is a bit of lost potential, because if you're filling time with garbage can and ladders, it's like going back to like the Metro games, it's like you have to watch out for your gas mask filters. You have to keep your flashlight charged. I mean, that wouldn't kill enough time, but it's like you could come up with, what if there was like the most lightest of hunger meters? You would never do that. And Naughty Dog would never do that because that's not what their games are. But I do understand the criticism of, it's like, yeah, the combat feels scrappy, but you don't have a whole lot of other stuff to ground yourself in the world. Like there was some shitty Xbox Live arcade game that the one cool thing it did is it was a survival game where all you had to do was hold a gun up at somebody and they would just leave you alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was like really janky because they would come rush to attack you if you stopped pointing at it. I don't even remember what the fuck that thing was, but it's like, it's something.
I remember that game. I remember seeing trailers for it.
I think it might be called like I Am Alive or some shit like that, but it's it's something, and so I can understand criticism from that angle.
Yes, it's called I Am Alive.
Damn, I got a better memory than I thought.
Yeah, you're a genius. So, you do have these very light RPG mechanics. Where you upgrade your weapons.
So light that I forgot that they
So light
existed.
that you forgot they existed. Which is you upgrade weapons and you take pills to give you more health or more vision with your detective vision or whatever.
I never feel like I'm making a good decision with those ever. I'm just like, no, the one substantial one is the one that lets you like quick swap between two guns. That's like the one I always say.
Crafting more holsters.
Yeah.
And increasing your health.
Oh, right.
With the pills,
definitely.
which are two different things, but increasing your health with the pills and making new holsters. Those are the only really useful ones.
Oh, yeah, that is so... I want to say, like, that shouldn't be there, the pills, because that is so abstract and such a otherwise trying to be grounded
that you
game.
take drugs and they make you have, quote, more health?
Yeah, it's like, what is that supposed to represent? Like, what is that supposed to be? Just get rid of it.
You don't feel pain because you're just a pillhead now, and you just take endless painkillers.
That's Far Cry 3. That when he's
yeah.
on so many drugs that he can't fucking see straight.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the story and the way that's going to go through it linearly?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to spend too much time on it because it's mostly vignettes. And
right.
I mean, and most of it, I'm going to say, okay, the beginning's a good place to start because there's several spots where it definitely does. It's one of the first games I can remember where it's like, we're going to make you wait a while to get a gun, like Uncharted 3.
Like Uncharted 3, where you start, the first character you play as is
his daughter.
Sarah. And you're playing as her throughout the opening. You get in the car, you go with his brother, and then she dies, obviously. Set up for the later redemption.
And
redemption.
I'm scared to say subverting expectations, but, the generic way of doing this is, of course, you play as Joel, and he gets to shoot people because you're the player and you want to shoot things, while Tommy carries Sarah. And then Tommy, what I like is they do the thing where he gets held up and he's like, you go on without me. And first time playthrough, you kind of expect him, that's the last you're going to see of him. And like, no, he's alive and daughter gets shot. I just thought that was pretty well done.
And he's not only alive in that, he's alive later, he comes back as a pretty important supporting character.
And he comes back in fucking Last of
And
Us
2 is an even more important supporting character.
Yeah, so right off the bat, you just have shit that probably a lot of people hadn't seen before. And of course, you're just hit on the head. Like, first scene is just people sitting on a couch displaying more humanity. If you're me and have spent most of your time playing Halo, you know, this is like a shocking amount of humanity that
just
you're witnessing.
Normal suburban house where people watching TV.
People watching TV, making jokes, and, you know, it's like, one time I was, like, playing this with my dad was in the room, you know, and it like, grabs his attention, you know, it's like, this is a video, it's one of those, this is a video game things, you know, which people love. People love that aspect, so you can twiddle your thumbs around, and other people can look at you and not say, oh my god, what an embarrassment.
Yeah, but so after that, you cut to 20 years later, and even then, you've got a bit until you get into a gunfight.
Right.
Of just walking around the city.
Tess is leading, and again, it's different because you would kind of expect Joel to be in charge or whatever, and I like that you have Tess, who's a bit of a mystery that doesn't get elaborated on too much, for she's the one with connections, and they have you can tell they got some sort of working relationship that's been going on for a while.
Yeah, but I'm glad that there's not some monologue where he explains exactly what happened. But so you have Tess, meet Ellie, you get out of the city. So here's something that tricked me about this game. Okay. The first time I played it, that really confused me, and then which is, so it opens with 20 years later, summer. Yeah. Those are the title cards when you cut from the prologue.
Right, right.
And so I was like, oh, okay, the game is going to be divided across a year, summer, fall, winter, spring. Obviously, because winter's going to be the dark one, and spring's going to be rebirth, right?
Yeah.
And I was right about that, because it's obvious. But I was wrong is that I assumed those would be the 4 chapters and they'd all be equal length.
No,
Summer's way longer.
They keep speeding up as the game goes.
Right, because summer is everything from waking up in Boston to escaping. Is it Detroit or Pittsburgh that you...
Pittsburgh.
To escaping Pittsburgh. Which is like probably half of the game, or almost half of the game.
Right.
Is summer. And then fall is just the dam with Tommy, going to that house and having your emotional catharsis. And then
the college,
and that's it. And then winter is the bit you play as Ellie where you team up with the guy.
In spring, you team up with Nolan. You team up with
Nolan North as a cannibalistic pedophile. Possible pedophile. You know,
people complain about these two dudes being in every video game, Troy Baker and Nolan North, but you know what? They do good work.
No, it's great that this game has Troy Baker versus Nolan North.
Right. Yeah.
It does.
By the time, it's like by the time Uncharted 4 comes around, it's like, all right, guys, like that's enough.
But yeah, Nolan North as a cannibalistic pedophile who leads a cult. And then
who's a worse person? The pedophile cannibal or the protagonist of BioShock Infinite? Who is voiced by Troy Baker.
Yeah, that's a conversation for when we play BioShock Infinite.
For when you play BioShock Infinite. I've got that game locked in my brain. I'm good to go.
But, and then you have just a very brief... What city are they in the ending? I'm trying to remember. Is it San Diego?
Fuck. I don't remember. You know, but spring, it's like, that's the end of the game. You're done.
That's
like,
the ending,
it's short.
Then it's just the hospital. And that's the end. I am going to look up a plot summary to figure out what game that is. Salt Lake. It's Salt Lake City.
Right.
We're the ending. And it's a very brief exploration sequence in Salt Lake City. And then, yeah, you get knocked out, you go to the hospital, and that's the climax.
Yeah.
So the game tricked me into thinking it would be much longer than it is.
Which, it's not bloated. It's not fucking bloated. That's the thing. We kind of went out of order a little bit. And I do think this is the peak of Naughty Dog because they just hit the perfect balance. It feels like it takes its time where it needs to, but it doesn't feel chubby.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
well paced, definitely.
It's my opinion. Barring some of that pacing is done by ladders.
Yeah, the ladder puzzles.
Probably the best pacing.
Yeah.
It's like 12 hours, and I guess I've always thought about that as like the perfect. Everybody has their own ideas, but for making like a big budget mainstream game, that's like 12 hours. That's a pretty good thing if you're not going open world. I gotta bring in Last of Us 2 a little bit.
In what
mainly
way?
to complement Last of Us 1, because when I was rewatching the cutscenes, I kind of came to the realization that this game is way smarter than 2, because the open structure and like vignettes where each season is different. You meet different people, you go on different adventures or whatever, has all the themes that Last of Us 2 focuses in on, but they're just there, and it's not so in your face. Like, you have Henry and his little brother, right. And that right there is like, well, what if there was another Joel and Ellie where they cared about each other very much and were willing to kill other people? And it plays with that by switching. You have to take care of the other kid, and he's got to take care of Ellie. And it's all done without, like, saying anything about it for the most part. And I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
We don't have to have, like, in 2, it's like, oh, what if the doctor had a child? And, ooh, it's like Joel and Ellie kind of thing. Like, everybody's got kids. And I guess what I'm saying, this game feels a little bit more honest, where it's like, yeah, of course, everybody's got kids. You know, of course we're orphaning kids. That's what this world is. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I do think the way, so if we're at that point, the way that it's Henry and Sam, right?
Yeah, Henry and Sam.
The way their story arc ends is a bit abrupt. Like, I get what it's going for thematically, where it's just Sam gets infected and then Henry kills himself.
Yeah.
And that feels a bit like we don't have anything more to do with these characters.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Get the shepherd's crook and just pull him away.
Just yanking him off stage because it's like they're done. Because
that's true. At the same time, I'm like, those characters, and we kind of skipped over the crazy trapper man. I forget his name.
Bill.
Yeah, Bill. Sam, Tess. All these characters, just less screen time, 1,000 times more interesting than anything that we get in Part 2. They have like their thing, and then they're out, and that's the appeal of the kind of road trip. That's another thing. Why is this a game? Because this sort of format works really well, where you're not telling something with 3 acts or whatever. It's a good formula for a game, in my opinion.
Okay, so you have that, but there is, so as much as it is vignettes, there is an obvious narrative through line.
Yeah,
of Joel and Ellie's relationship. Like, it's sort of episodic.
That's the through line. Is it?
Right.
Those two are always growing, and
well, they are also all part of the same quest.
right.
Like, it is not like just random adventures they're having while on the road. They are always trying to get to the Fireflies.
Yeah, everything's we got to get a car.
We have to get a car or find the person who will know where we're going, or find the thing that will tell us the next place to go, or get the medicine so Joel doesn't die.
You know, going back to like the Sam and why can't I remember
Henry.
both of them? Henry and Sam. That sniper section is pretty fucking goofy.
Oh, where you get the big ass sniper rifle you only get in that section?
That has infinite ammo, and you end up like taking out a tank.
A tank? Yeah.
And that's where you see a little bit more of like old Naughty Dog.
Yeah. That's an Uncharted sequence.
Yeah.
a sequence of a kind that notably isn't really in the second game. So you can see like the transition holdovers in this game.
Definitely. Man, it hurts a little bit. Like, an infinite ammo sniper rifle is pretty tough sell in a game that you're worrying about ammo counts a lot in this game.
And the fact that it's like a sequence gun that you never get to pick up again.
Right. It's like a turret section.
Yeah, which is bizarre for a game like this where you're constantly building up your arsenal by getting new guns. And then you get this crazy powerful sniper rifle, and then you just lose it.
It's kind of fucking awesome because, like, Joel becomes, like, Doom Guy. Or it's like, I have 10 different guns on, but they're all in his backpack, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, but I do think it's nice that you can only keep so many in your holsters at once.
That's what keeps it balanced.
Yeah, because you have... How many guns do you have? By the end of the game, I mean.
Plenty is what you
shotgun,
have.
rifle, bow,
flamethrower,
which are your long guns, and then you have automatic pistol, revolver, magnum, hunting pistol.
They don't give you an automatic pistol. Oh, you mean like
automatic pistol means semi-automatic.
Okay, fucking gun nerd.
Okay, you have the shotgun pistol that you get.
Oh yeah, the shoddy. The
shotgun pistol, and like the hunting pistol.
They could have cut that.
Yeah. So you have like 4 handguns and 4 long guns.
I just realized now that they don't give you a flamethrower in part 2, right?
They do, but only as Abby.
Damn. Yeah. Now I remember.
Yeah. Ellie does not get a flamethrower.
Because Abby mechanically is like Joel in that game.
Yeah. Probably deliberately.
Yeah. While I'm talking about, like...
Wait, hang on.
Go ahead.
I was making a point about that through line. Because... I mean, it's about the ending. So the ending, I think... So the ending was one of the most debated parts. I remember in that video you sent me, where he talks about the ending. He says he feels like it doesn't do enough to condemn Joel's actions, and that it kind of treats lying to Ellie as the more horrifying than dooming humanity.
Which he's wrong about. That one he's just...
And I don't know if that response is what led to Last of Us 2 being very unsubtle about viewing Joel's actions as bad. Because people had that reaction and were like, the game thinks Joel's right.
We're going to have to...
We're going to talk about that in
that will be like the whole first section of that episode.
Yeah, but...
I like it. I the ending is what makes this game, a 10 out of 10. The ambiguity. And there was that guy, Errant Signal, he used to run with another writer named Seamus Young, who did an article for The Escapist called
he used to run with him.
Yeah, I used to run with, like,
with him. We were on the same. We were on the streets together.
Yeah, we were in the fucking trenches in the streaming game back in 2010.
The dark ages.
Yeah, when they were real trailblazers. But anyway, Seamus had an article called, I think it was called "Joel Was Right," and he wasn't making really like an argument out of passion or anything like that. He was just going for plot details, and he kind of just showed it's like, yeah, the Fireflies kind of proved themselves to be incompetent with like remember, one of them just gets bitten by the monkeys, and that's how that whole thing breaks out in the college.
And yeah, the one voiced by Steve Bloom, hilariously.
And he does say it's like, it seems deliberate because they show, the first thing they show is like the Fireflies just bombing something, you know, and
Right.
I think, and ultimately he just comes down with, he thinks that the ending's good because it is an argument. And I think that was pretty deliberate because it's really hard to have you play as a bad character. And not like ironic bad or like deliberately bad like you're playing like GTA 5 or whatever. You know, like a bad guy. And so you have to have the player, you know, able to have some sort of deniability that Joel was right. Because a certain portion of the players, and I think that's the portion that got really mad, and I just said it was deliberate, but Last of Us 2 calls that into question, and we can't even get into that. Right. I like it. I like that it. Well, so you linked to me that great podcast, Right Good, where they talk about squeakcore, about having, it's like we need to show the themes and make sure that you are believing the right things about this piece of media, that you're not misinterpreting Fight Club or misinterpreting The Matrix, you know, and this game doesn't do that. You have to draw your own conclusions about whether he's a bad person or not.
But what I was going to say about that ending is that I think it does an interesting rug pull on Joel's character development, because he's subverting expectations. So here's an expectation. We open with his daughter's death. And his daughter is like almost the same age as Ellie, looks like Ellie, so it's very obvious that when you meet Ellie, it's very obvious, okay, he's going to reforge that father-daughter connection and become a better person and not this cynical piece of shit smuggler, thief, murderer that he is at the beginning of the game. Right? And then throughout the game, when Ellie runs off to that house because she doesn't want Joel to abandon her, and when Joel is sick and Ellie's taking care of him, and then when Ellie saves her from David, which is the name of that cannibal pedophile.
Right.
All of that has us rooting for that relationship and implicitly assuming that by forming that relationship with Ellie, Joel is becoming a better person. But then the ending happens. And we are forced to wonder if actually... So now he cares about Ellie, and we're forced to confront the fact that that does not translate to him caring about anyone else.
And it calls into question who is us, and who's in your in-group.
Yeah, because we were, I think, because that is the conventional Hollywood narrative, we were assuming... Because, yeah, the cynical old man who has who finds new meaning in his life. And I mean, this is the plot of the Gran Torino. As much as that movie is just a joke about it having racial slurs in it, that is the actual plot of that movie, right?
Yeah.
It is the story of a bitter, cynical, seen-it-all older person. And there's tons of movies like this. Gran Torino is just the first one that came into my head, right? Where it's like, and then they form a connection with someone younger. They come to care about them. There's a surrogate parent relationship, and that makes the older person a better person. And Last of Us is that until the ending, when you're forced to confront the idea that Joel is the same person, he just has one person he cares about. But he cares about that person to the exclusion of literally everyone else.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I guess it's like... I don't know if you want to call it like the right type of subversion, or it's where you think about it for 5 seconds and it's like, why would you think Joel wouldn't kill these people? What has he been doing the whole game? It feels honest, is what it feels like.
Yeah. What have you been? Yeah, you've been killing people to protect Ellie. And so
You're
he's
going to
gonna
keep doing that.
because he came to care about Ellie. He did not at any point come to care about Ellie's mission or the mission to cure the fungus or whatever.
And what keeps certain people from putting the controller down and saying, why can't I choose the good ending, is having that deniability of, well, shit, maybe they're just a bunch of dumb fucks anyways.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I don't think that's what makes people not put down the controller. So, because there's an obvious point of comparison here to Shadow of the Colossus.
Right.
And in Shadow of the Colossus, throughout the game, and maybe this is told more mechanically than narratively, like in Last of Us,
Yeah.
but you are meant to come to understand that you're the bad guy. That the power you're serving is evil, and that killing the Colossi is wrong, and you're doing it for an entirely selfish reason, to resurrect your wife.
And it's like killing you too.
And it's, you're becoming corrupted by doing it. You become less human as you kill these colossi and absorb their souls into you.
Yes.
For this dark power that you believe can resurrect your love. And it's the same kind of story, right? The main character is a piece of shit who only cares about one person and is willing to damn the entire world to save that one person. Now, this is, again, not revealed quite as explicitly as it is in Last of Us. It's more implied through a lot of more subtle means, I think. Until the ending.
Until the end.
Until the ending, when you learn straight up that you were serving, like, cosmic evil. But, so Dan Olson had a great... He did a video on...
Yeah, I have seen that at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
So what he says is, that game does not implicate the player in Wanderer's actions. Because it doesn't implicate the player any more than the actor who plays Macbeth murdered King Duncan. You are enacting this narrative, but you're not controlling it. The player character is not you. And I think the same thing about Joel. The reason people don't put down the controller is because they want to see how the story ends. Joel is not them. They didn't make choices. They never did through the whole game. So it'd be different if this was a game that had a choice system and then didn't let you choose the ending. But because this is a game where you are not directing the narrative, you are playing Joel the way an actor plays Macbeth. The fact that Joel is doing something shitty and you, quote unquote, as playing him, killing the fireflies, killing the doctor, are doing shitty things, you still just want to see where this goes. If you're invested and you care.
Right.
So it's
to
fine that Joel is wrong.
shove in what we were talking about earlier, is that's what some people dislike about this sort of game, where that isn't the point, compared to like This War of Mine, where you feel bad about you feel a certain way about your own shitty choices you make
because you did it. Even if the game mechanics direct you to do it because of the way you survive in that game, you still did it. There's still theoretically an option within the game's mechanics not to do that. It would be disadvantageous and would probably lead to you losing, but there are options to not do that.
And, there's the Metro games where you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room in a main narrative where you can be a lot more cruel or humane. Cruel,
and you
humane.
get different endings based on what you do.
Sort of. Let me just say for a second that love those games. Fuck that morality system. It is utterly bizarre.
Yes.
Yeah, alright, so great ending, pretty good game.
Yeah.
A few other things on the topic of old Naughty Dog still, or at least kind of Uncharted Naughty Dog still kicking in there. We talked about the sniper rifle, but we talked a little bit about you have the beat where Ellie runs away. And
you ride the horses.
I think it's interesting that they felt like they needed to put a combat beat while you're going after Ellie.
Yeah.
And afterwards, too. That's what breaks up that emotional scene. And it's like, if this was later Naughty Dog, I feel like that would just be...
be the chase and then the house.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
I think
agree.
for that scene, that would have been a better choice. It's probably the only part where I'm like, damn, this shit feels like Uncharted. It's like, did we really need a gunfight right now?
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to where I think you lose some people with the PS4 Naughty Dog titles, whereas this game is the perfect amount for most people between the walkie-talkie bits and just how pretentious you're going to be. Yeah.
The shooty bits, yeah.
Where you can still just play it like a video game and you're not going to get too anxious because you haven't had a gunfight in a while.
Yeah.
Even though it does make you wait, but it doesn't make you wait as long as you will be waiting in later games.
That's a threat.
You're gonna fucking wait, sir.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, I forgot. Huge thing. Sad Dad.
Sad dads.
We gotta talk about sad dads.
I did revisit the Dad and Nina video games.
Yes, this
article.
game is, I think, where that term was coined. And this game ushered in the sad dadification. The daddening of games. Of all games. So I just talk about the trend a little. So this is when, because this is the epitome of prestige games, this is when games were, big budget AAA games were like, okay, we gotta have themes. Not just a story, not just a plot, there gotta be themes.
But you gotta remember, it's not just sad dads, it's sad murder dads.
Yes. Well, because it's still a big budget video game, so you do have to be a killing machine.
And that's how you answer the question of, how do I make a serious game with themes that has you killing hundreds of dudes and somewhat basic combat? And the answer is a sad dad, kind of Unforgiven style of protagonist.
Or The Road, which is a very obvious influence on this. Because this game and Bioshock Infinite, once again, came out the same year. And both, spoilers for Bioshock Infinite, sort of settle on fatherhood as a core theme.
I mean, that is a core theme. I mean, it's with Bioshock Infinite, it's certainly one of the themes.
Well, okay. We can get into the other themes in Bioshock Infinite later. But one of the core elements and the core relationship, like both have a relationship between a sort of adult male father figure and a younger female character. Adult male father figure who is the player character. Who is the player character, and he is killing explicitly to protect the younger female daughter figure. Right? And then this ushered in the daddening, where every video game became about sad dads, to the point where reaching max absurdity with Kratos.
Yes, and
Kratos.
I gotta say, I haven't played the reboot yet, which I assume we'll talk about, but I've been making my way through the original, and I kind of understand why some people were like, really? You're making Kratos a sad dad?
Yes, because Kratos is the epitome of edgy bullshit edgelord video game protagonists who just kill and fuck and are cool dudes.
But okay, but the thing is in the first game he's still technically a sad dad because he like murdered his wife and kids.
Right. But
yeah,
he did that to make him a cool edgy murder dude.
Yeah.
It's his relationship with his wife and children does not matter. We are not expected
I'll tell you more about that when I play the last 2 hours of that game. But you've got what else do you have? You have, I guess, Heavy Rain a little bit.
That's way earlier. No,
yeah, I know, but some of these are earlier. Like, you have a little bit before. You have Max Payne.
Yes.
You have The Walking Dead, which the sad
Walking Dead.
murder-
Oh, Walking Dead
he's
is the
just
other
a-
thing that's sad.
He's
dad.
just a
Walking
sad
Dead.
dad. He's less of a sad murder dad. But the murder dad, fucking Watch Dogs is kind of that. I know it's like his niece or whatever, but he's like a dad. What else do you got? I don't know. It's there. I just can't.
But regardless, because I saw this, because I remember when the sad dad thing was going around, the going theory for why was that a certain generation of game developer had become middle aged, and we're entering their 40s, and we're now dads. And
Yeah,
so
that's
when
probably part of it.
when it came time to make a theme in your story, they just immediately just sort of default to fatherhood because that's what's going on in their lives. I don't know how true that is.
That's
To be clear,
probably
I think
part
that's
of it.
kind of a bit conjecture.
The stronger parts, I think, is it. Like I said, it answers questions. Like, what I want to have my character rescue a female character. How do I make that not sexist?
Yeah.
Well, a dad is supposed to rescue his daughter, for the most part.
Right.
Or, I don't want it to be like the love interest. I mean,
You
going
don't
back
want it
to
to
like
feel like a love interest as prize thing.
yeah, it's a way of solving that issue of like
Right.
you taking care
But
of
still
someone.
doing it.
Yeah, but still
You don't
fully
solve
doing
it by not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I guess you know what? Last of Us 2, not playing a sad dad. You're murdering a sad dad.
Yes. You do not play. You play as sad daughter.
You play as sad daughters, but you know what?
Yes, both two sad daughters.
That's different.
We replace one sad dad with two sad daughters.
Yeah. All right. Did you play the Left Behind DLC at some point?
Yes, I did. And I don't really have much to say about it because it's just more of the game.
What I have to say about it is a little bit what I talked about with Uncharted 4 is they're playing with like really extended sequences of non-combat.
Right, where you're just the entire flashbacks until... Well, no, actually the entire flashbacks are not combat.
Right.
It's fucking around for most of it and then running away.
And
There's no combat in those flashbacks at all.
repurposing combat mechanics to like more lighthearted fare. Like we're gonna have you have a water gun fight. You're gonna throw bricks at cars, and you can see that in The Last of Us 2, where it's like we're gonna have a snowball fight with some kids.
Right. The first quote unquote combat in that entire game
Yeah, and so you can see
is throwing snowballs at children.
that a bit, which I guess the only interesting part about that is, that's the beginning of Uncharted 4 extended hat trying on section where it starts it becomes too fucking much. Where it's like
In Uncharted 4 or in Left Behind?
It's in Uncharted 4 and Last of Us 2. It's too much. I think Left Behind is fine from what I remember.
Right.
I guess it's
it is
kind
trying
of
to make you...
important that it establishes that Ellie is a lesbian, but it's like you don't really need that established. Like
No, and that's not going to become important until Left Behind 2.
Last of Us 2.
Last of Us 2. Fuck.
Left Behind 2.
Left Behind 2 starring Kirk Cameron.
Starring Kirk Cameron and Nicolas Cage.
No, those were two different versions of those movies.
Yeah, well, wouldn't it be great to have them both?
Kirk Cameron is Buck Rogers.
No, have David A.R. White as a sad dad. Wait,
Buck
we
Williams.
need to watch.
Sorry, Buck
We
Williams.
need to watch
Buck
Beckman,
Rogers is a
where
different
David
thing.
A.R. White is a sad dad who has to
Shut
kill
up.
people.
No, we're talking about Last of Us.
Not anymore. We're
Okay,
not.
back to Last of Us.
I don't know what else is there to say.
Cut this. Yeah. Left Behind is just more of the game. It does, I think it does use the extended non-combat effectively because the emotional beat is that it needs to sell you on caring about these characters in a very short amount of time.
There's also the first time that they have humans and zombies interact with each other. Like NPCs.
In what way?
Like, like the bad humans and the bad zombies. Which you don't...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, which...
Because that becomes way bigger in Last of Us 2.
It is kind of crazy that they
movies.
didn't do that in the first game.
In the core, yeah, there were never sequences where human enemies fight zombies.
And when it does happen in the DLC, it's kind of jank. And, I mean, like, congrats to them if they just realized this isn't feasible and they just said no.
that their AI wasn't good enough yet.
But it is kind of crazy because, I mean, like, if anything, they seem to like that shit, judging from Uncharted 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that shit. That's what I like about Halo, with the flood and stuff.
Yeah, but I just think their AI was not good enough to handle a full-on, like... Especially two types of AI that have two different behavior patterns.
Right.
Because the blue guys in Uncharted 2 are still just shooting you.
Yeah, they're just big.
They're just shooting you. Right. But the zombie AI has to have a totally different set of behaviors because it doesn't shoot you. And it's... In the sections I replayed, not that good.
Okay. Well...
A lot of running in front of doors and not really attacking me.
Yeah. So, alright. I want to kind of try and... unless you got something else big, I want to try and wrap this up a bit. Any thoughts? Anything else?
No. I think I think it holds up pretty well.
I think it does too. And I think it's because you have a line that's crossed between... Uncharted, or I guess like before and after this game, of it being too serious versus not thinking about how your gameplay and story interact. And this game hits that sweet spot because, like I said, it's about killing people, but those people can still be stormtroopers, and
Right.
it's about it. You don't have to think about all the weird implications that both sides of that spectrum make you think about, where we're going to lean into the fact you're killing people versus we're not going to even think about it.